Hi, and welcome to An Extraordinary Life TV, where we bring you extraordinary people that bring out the extraordinary in you. I'm Dane Stevens, and I'm here today with Dr. Michael Chrane. He works with individuals, teaches, and trains people in the Alphabiotic process. He has 60 years of experience with the process, and this work was handed to him by from his father and from his grandfather. He is now the senior professor of the Academy and help people to release stress and live better, more fulfilling lives in a natural way that allows your body to work in its fuller capacity, in its natural way. So welcome, Dr. Chrane, and thank you so much for being here with us, because I actually did the Alphabiotics process myself a number of times when I lived in California and was absolutely blown away. I was with Dr. Richard Wright. And after that, it was very intriguing, and I wanted to learn more about the process, where it came from, how it came about, and the science behind it. And like I said, I really enjoyed our conversation. Look forward to continuing that too, to learn more about this and how it did come about. Okay. And you're in Dallas, Texas right now?
Correct. And this is the location of the Academy and the office in which I practice out of. And I've been there over 30 years in that one location. But officially, Alphabiotics started in Dallas in 1979. Okay. We formed the first legal structure for it.
Got it. And it says you have 60 years experience. I have to say, you look really good.
It must be 40 years.
Living proof. There you go. Living testimonial.
Yeah. Actually, more like 40 years. But I think my father started training me when I was even in high school. So
right. I kind of figured there was something. Yeah. Right. Okay.
So it's a 3-generation deal for sure.
Got it. And your grandfather founded this.
Yes.
And first of all, how did this come about? I'm gonna explain a little bit more, because a lot of people don't understand Alphabiotics. But where did it come from? How did it come about?
Well, it's very interesting. My grandfather was the son of a cattle rancher out in West Texas, just on the other side of Abilene, Texas, more central Texas, actually. And they had a very traumatic event in their family. They lost his brother to a trauma. And anyway, it had a real devastating effect on the family. And so after having grieved for quite some time, he just couldn't stay in that area anymore. So he had to kind of get away. And what he did is he ended up going to Arizona. And I believe it was in Phoenix. And anyway, he went to work for a gentleman that was a chiropractor in his gym. And anyway, they hit it off and really worked on a lot of things. My grandfather was quite the physical specimen. He was like 6'6", and all muscle, 200 and something pounds, and was a bodybuilder. He developed his own bodybuilding system along with this chiropractor. And so he ended up going back to Texas and going to Texas Chiropractic College. And so when he got out of Texas Chiropractic College, he practiced in a few different places, some in Texas, I think he spent a little time out in California. And he went on a journey of just going around the West Coast, looking and seeing what other chiropractors were doing and so forth at that particular time. This would have been in the 30s. And so he said, back in those days, we call him Big Virgil, okay, because he was such a big specimen. So anyway, Big Virgil didn't take a lot of notes, and he didn't do any, like today, you have so many social things and ways of recording, things of that. And he didn't do any of that. I mean, he recorded some records which got, warped, and we never could, get the information off of them. So we had to rely a lot on just stories that were told. And of course, my dad when he was his mother and father divorced, and when he was in junior high school, and he ended up living in Lubbock, Texas, which is way out West Texas, and for several reasons, they ended up sending him to the Texas Military Institute, which was in San Antonio, where he reconnected with his dad. And when he did, Big Virgil had been practicing for a while, and he had developed this process. So the stories that we got were a lot from, the stories that my dad would tell me about the interactions with him and the things that went on. And my dad was the writer and the one that really did a lot of the lectures and all that kind of stuff. He really was the more media present person out there. And anyway, Big Virgil had there's old stories of him about his practice. He would see 200 to 300 people a day doing this process. And he lived in a very small town right outside of Abilene, Texas. It was called Buffalo Gap. And Buffalo Gap had a population of 100. And so people would start to come. He practiced 4 days a week, I think, back then, and he would open up about noon. And so they would start arriving at 9 in the morning because of the quantity of people there were. Yeah. And so he had a national acclaim. People would come from all over. And this is how my other grandparents met him, because my mother had some vision issues. And so they were traveling, and they were living in Sweetwater at the time, and they were traveling, which isn't that far. But nonetheless, that's where my mother and father met, because she was traveling, and my other grandfather was so impressed by Big Virgil that he ended up going to chiropractic college, and my grandmother. Oh, wow. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
We should probably let people in on this, because they're probably going, well, what is it? And I know that's a kind of a tough thing to explain. So this is where the conversation really starts, and it gets intriguing, because it's not chiropractic, but not an adjustment. How would you describe it?
Well, the way that we describe it is that it's a high sensory input to basically, it's very much in today's time, we can use computer analogies, because it really, the brain works like a computer. And so back in my grandfather's day, I don't know how much he didn't know about computers, obviously. So I've had to kind of backtrack and think. So I think he was just innately guided and came up with the process. Like I said, he said it took him 19 years to develop it. And so in essence, what it is it's a way to actually reboot the brain manually. Ah. And so there's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of different other systems out there that also claim to do that with either sound or touching or anti-gravitational type of things, or more subtle processes. And but the problem with a lot of those is the science is there, and they do accomplish it, but it doesn't last very long, because we live in this biomechanical body as well. I mean, we're mostly muscle and bone, and the nervous system primarily runs everything. Right. Okay, and so it has about 80% of what the brain does is just take in information. It's a stimulus response system. So as it takes in information, then it responds according to the blueprint. And that's based on, that 80 to 90% of the people come into the world in, normal. Okay. And it doesn't mean that you can't benefit if you don't, but in essence, the nervous system, the brain has two sides of the brain, and one side is more dominant and one side is more subdominant, and it's very hardwired for survival. And as we know, the thing that breaks us down isn't just stress. Okay, there's clear and present danger stress, which we're quite capable of handling, because it has a definite beginning and an end. But it's this complex stress that really is that starts to break us down, and it does it over time. And there's a physics to it in terms of how you produce hormones, and the brain turns off systems that it doesn't need when it's in fight or flight, in this chronic fight or flight. And so in essence, since it is a stimulus response system, he figured out a way to introduce a stimulus to get the brain to do a systems check. And when it does the systems check, you're obviously not under attack at the time. And so what it does is it shifts from sympathetic to parasympathetic.
Got it.
So all the hormones and everything that's in that state of stress automatically shifts back over. The problem is that through the course of a person's lifetime, they're not in that state very long. They're more in this high beta brainwave frequency, 15 to 35 cycles. And when you do that, you brain lateralize, and you also shift to the locus coeruleus, which is in the base of the brain, and it's where you store old trauma. And that's also where a lot of your negative self-talk comes from because of the old trauma. So when we do this process, and I sent you some pictures, which I'll quickly explain. It shows you the RBCs when you're in stress, and then when you come out of the stress. These were taken 2 to 5 minutes after the alignment process.
Okay.
And you can see the change in just how how the red blood cells are oxygenating, and how they unclump and can move into the tissue again. Right. And so as soon as, and these other systems that I was referring to can do the same thing. One of the things, because of it being manually applied, there's a drop of tension. There's a dramatic drop of tension. And so therefore, the person can maintain the state much, much longer.
So you're saying that you can take people out of fight or flight with this?
Take them out of fight or flight, measurably.
Wow. Wow.
Because you cannot maintain body alignment and be in fight or flight.
Oh, how interesting.
Okay, because that's when the brain does the shifting. And when it shifts, have you ever seen the old pictures of the caveman, and one shoulder's higher than the other and he's ready for battle? And that's because he's locked into his more dominant hemisphere. And when that happens, when the brain turns off those non-essential systems, it leaves you with a deficit, and that shows up as muscular weakness. And a chiropractor by the name of Goodhart figured out that weakness always precedes tension. So there's a lack of power that's created by the chronic stress response. And so it leaves you with this deficit and shows up as muscular weakness, because it communicates from above down, inside out. So if one half of you is weaker, then the other half of you contracts and tightens. And that's what throws you biomechanically out of alignment.
Isn't that funny? I mean, when something needs to be strengthened and something needs to be lengthened, it's always the case.
Yeah.
You're talking about that on a more a cellular level almost.
Absolutely.
Yes. Wow.
This is all happening at the cell level. When you're in fight or flight, so are your cells. Right. And so they're either in a state of growth and repair, or they're in a state of degeneration and decline. They're never doing both at the same time. And that's how we're living longer, but we're starting to show, a lot of signs of degenerative diseases early on. And we believe that a lot of this is, stress related.
I saw on your website, it says we are in the midst of the worst degenerative disease crisis in the history of humankind.
Yeah. Like I said, we're living longer, but it's not a qualitative state, because even in my practice, I see people from, little kids all the way up until their 80s or 90s, and there's serious stress issues. There's, 3 basic kinds of stress. There's physical stress, just dealing with gravity all day long. And if you're walking unevenly and your spine is not sitting on a level foundation, you're getting all kinds of, impact from that. Right. And then we have a tremendous amount of chemical stress, more so than ever before, from all kinds of, external situations.
Our food, in some cases, huh? Right.
Yeah. And then the emotional component is, where there's stuff with high emotional content and pain, but most of it is just living life on a day-to-day basis. And when you lock into this stress state, you get 95% of your self-talk becomes negative, and the brain doesn't discern between reality and illusion. So it's just reacting to stimulus.
Right.
And, and then you're dealing with worrying about problems. And, the computer age has brought a lot of positives, but it also has brought a lot of stress.
Yeah, yeah, and posture is a big part of that. No question, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I'm going to call this an adjustment, an alignment. Sorry. So when you come
Yeah.
and you get an alignment, I mean, I know because I experienced it. Like I say, it blew me away. But
Yeah.
you get to feel good,
Yeah. Yeah. It
and
shifts things.
you get automatic results. Yeah.
Well, in some cases, I mean, what you get every time you do it is it's not really designed, believe it or not, to make you feel good. It's actually designed to help you function better.
Right.
So we call it a stress release and recovery system. And so
I
there's
just
two.
saw I'm going to have to read it because it's so long. And so it's the alignment process, which technically is referred as Alphabiotic brain balancing stress release cause correction process.
Right.
That you got it all covered there.
Yeah, it's not really designed to make you feel better. It's designed to help you function better. And so we know that if you have more brain power going in the right direction and less toxic hormones that are preparing you for battle, then you're going to function better.
You're going
And
to
you're
be
going to function
relaxed,
better.
obviously.
Well, you're going to be physically balanced because you have the resources to maintain that.
Yep.
Your thinking changes because you come out of that hindbrain function more in the frontal cortex and back up into the neocortex. The brain slows down to about 8 to 12 cycles, which if you get in a flotation tank for an hour and a half, same thing starts to happen, okay? Just to kind of give you a comparison. You start to work better at the cell level. And so when you're in that stress response, you're not thinking about digestion and elimination and all those things. So those things start to turn back on. We know that your immune system is suppressed when you're in fight or flight. We know there's a great correlation between heart attacks and stress. So the whole idea behind it is because what's happened in a lot of the systems is it's become symptomatic driven, which in some cases is okay. I mean, you use symptoms to direct you in certain situations, but the more important thing is the revitalization and high functionability. So when you're staying in that state of discharge, think of it like a battery inside of you that is being drained all the time. And you don't know it until it hits a certain level, and then you start to get the symptoms. Now, depending where you are on that vitality chart, when you come back into balance, sometimes you do get, immediately when a person's been that discharged for so long, they immediately feel the change in how they move.
Right.
Because they feel lighter, they're not dragging one side. But now they're in the process of not only functioning better, but they're in the process of revitalization, or another term, healing, and building the battery back up. And so in some of those cases, they can feel worse in the process.
Right.
I kind of use the analogy, it's like a leg that's been asleep for a long time and it starts to wake up. It's achy and tingly, but you know what that is. So it's something you can relate to.
Right.
But when your whole body is waking up, spiritually, physically, chemically, biomechanically, then there's a lot of things that person can experience.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So it's not all, that was my experience. I just felt amazing right away. I was just amazed.
Yeah.
So that's not always the case, though.
It's not always the case. I would say that over a period of time, if the person uses the work in the way that it's suggested to them, then I would say the percentages are 90% plus that they all get benefit. They see benefit from it.
Got it. So we at an Extraordinary Life, we work with it's very ironic, the right-left brain process.
Right.
We call it bringing people back to their nature. And that's kind of what I'm hearing here. And I think it's on I also read that you bring people back to allow the body to do its natural work, or back to its would you say its natural state?
Yes, that's the whole idea of homeostasis.
Okay.
And, the when a person gets into that stress response, they drop into that limbic system, which is mid-level brain function, and that limbic system is where all the stress hormones are triggered. The hypothalamus then starts to take over and direct what it needs to do. And if you keep getting the stimulus that you need to stay in fight or flight, it has a whole nother system for that. So once you run out of the fight or flight initial response, it has a way of producing other hormones for the prolonged chronic response. So that's why you continue to break down, and the side effects of that are your blood pressure goes up, your blood sugar levels go up, your blood fat levels go up. I mean, these are all signs of being in that state. And there's a direct correlation between how your arteries function and over the long haul and how much stress you're under, not just chemically, but also emotionally as well.
Got it. Got it. I'm so intrigued about the science, and I guess it's one of those things, like you say, Virgil Sr. did it for 19 years and just maybe did it intuitively or what have you. But I'm going to speak a little bit about it. It's an adjustment for the kind of the upper spine. We're not going to show pictures and so on because I know.
We never use the word adjustment because that's a chiropractic terminology.
Okay. Yeah.
And chiropractic adjustment is about actually setting a segment. And so when they look at you, they look at you like a structural bridge. Okay. And there's different techniques of all kinds these days. Most of the schools teach a technique, unless they're what we call, there's a lot of schools out there that teach a lot of physical therapy as well as adjusting. Okay. And, but most of what they teach, like in Parker, and who, by the way, was a huge fan of my grandfather, and Palmer, where I graduated, Palmer came up with what was called the HIO technique, which was an atlas adjustment. And most of them do what's called a hip roll, a thoracic adjustment, and a cervical adjustment. There are better techniques out there that were developed by people like Gonstead, and anyway, you get into all kinds of, but most of the people that design those techniques did it as they looked at you like an engineer would look at you, okay, and then based on degenerative pathology and so forth. And so we refer to this as an alignment. Alignment is actually a word that the computer industry came up with. I've felt like we should, in hindsight, I wish we could have stuck to something more like a reboot or a high sensory input type of thing. But anyway, alignment's not used. I mean, we can use it legally and technically. And so it's to align the hemispheres of the brain, unlike an adjustment, which is designed to set the segment.
Got it. Okay. And it's funny, you say that you assume that human beings are whole-brained in their natural state. And, Einstein said we use about 10% of our brain. And so what we're giving ourselves is more access to, we talk about the control system, but you're talking about getting to cause too, correct?
Yes. Yeah, because we feel like the cause of how we dysfunction on all those levels is being locked into that stress state most of the time. That's when we make, not as good of decisions. That's when we don't function as well physiologically. And then, so it's kind of like you're breaking down. It's like you're falling off a building, but you don't know it until you hit the bottom when you're in the stress state.
That would not be good.
But symptoms are the last thing that you get, there's, yeah, especially degenerative diseases type thing.
Yeah, the issue is never the issue, huh?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And
there's so many components to that. The brain is we're still learning so much about how incredible that whole system is.
Right.
But when we do this process, we're creating a stimulus, just like that reset button, what you experienced. We theorize, we've done pre and post, where we've done EEGs, and obviously every time, unless the person has some kind of a structural injury or some kind of deformity, that when we do this process, they measurably come back into alignment. The strength comes back. Their symmetry comes back. I mean, I have people come in as families, and I let them all watch to see, the shift on the table. It's that quick.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is so powerful about this work is it lasts 3 to 4 days in the beginning, where most balance systems do not last. If they last a day, you're lucky. Actual measurable balance and strength.
So what kind of results have you experienced in this work?
Oh, you get all kinds of results. I mean, because the body is such an incredible self-healing system.
Right.
That once you put it in the most favorable circumstances, if it's not damaged beyond its ability to, respond, and if the person, what you run into in helping people deal with their issues is people don't like to make change.
Yeah.
I mean, you're lucky if you get 3% of the people to make change. And even though we've become kind of wellness coaches, sharing, what we do, to try to stay healthy and so forth. But, you have to have good food, and you have to have sensible movement, exercise, and you have to, we're real fond of the mindful group that try to teach people to live in the present. Yeah. And people can do it on occasion. They just don't maintain it for very long. Right. And then they slip back into the pattern. So it is a battle.
Okay. So do people, obviously they have to be willing, but if a person shows up,
yeah,
if there is an unwillingness, is that going to stop the process?
Yeah. If they come in,
emotional unwillingness.
Well, and I always tell people when I'm working with them, and the first thing that we do is we explain the work, and then we give them an initial alignment to show them what we're talking about. In other words, I explain it like I was explaining it to you. And then we show them what the difference is when they're come out of the stress state versus when they're in the stress state. Body alignment comes back. I'd say 80% of people that get off the table immediately feel the difference.
Right.
Okay. And then we have them come back in 2 days. And what we're looking for on that second visit is to see if they're maintaining the balance. Right. Because if they're maintaining it, then that means it's a process that will work for them in terms of being able to stay out of the stress state. And so then we can tell by how much tension tries to come back, how close they are to losing the alignment again. Okay. And so that's how we base our recommendation. And if the person finds value in it, I always tell them this. I say, if you find value in this work and you want to get the best for your money, then follow my instructions in terms of how often to do it. And so if they follow through, they get really good results. Got it. And I have to tell you, of the 30 years or almost 40 years of doing it here in Dallas, I have people that come to me that have been coming to me for 30 years. Wow. So they see the value, and that's the ones you work with. A lot of people are very symptom driven, and if they don't have a symptom, then they don't think it's something they need to do.
I see. Got it. So one of the complaints you hear about chiropractic a lot is they just want you to keep coming back, or the theory or the belief is, I don't know how it is for different people, I suppose, but that once you see a chiropractor, you're going to have to keep coming forever and ever. Is there something you can, it sounds like there is in the different areas of balance in their life, but do you give people other homework as such, or is there stuff they can do on their own, or do they have to keep coming back to you? And what's the natural time?
Yeah. I think one of the beauties with our system is they last longer, faster, and can get to those longer holding times. Unfortunately, because of the stress loads today, and most of the spinal manipulation doesn't last very long. That even comes from, I don't know if you ever heard of a guy by the name of Mortar. He came up with the bioenergetic synchronization technique.
Yes, yeah, I do, yeah.
Okay. Well, Mortar was the president of Parker College.
Oh.
And he made a statement that he no longer believed in osseous adjusting because it didn't last. And so, and I'm chiropractically trained. I mean, I graduated from Palmer, and but three things happen when you adjust a segment. Either, like if you adjust a segment, it either distorts above or below, or it which is 1 and 2, and then number 3, it comes back. And the reason being is you never dealt with the underlying cause, which is the weakness tension component that we were referring to earlier. But yes, we do encourage people to evaluate their stress in their life, because there's all kinds of soft reboots, like when a really positive thing happens in your life, and getting hugs and all these things that are nurturing can be these soft reboots. And but it takes some discipline, and that's why we're big fans of the mindfulness people, because I always tell people, look, I'm doing for you what you can do for yourself, but I know it's difficult for you to do it because it takes a lot of effort to do that. I mean, a lot of times people will come to that have come in were involved in TM, and they kept saying, I can't get there. I just can't get there. And I said, I'll tell you what, come and get alignment first and then go.
Yeah.
And invariably they come back and say, I got there.
Yeah, I bet.
And I said, well, keep it up, because that's how you need me less, or if ever.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think Virgil said is that the ultimate is to connect with the very source.
Yes.
Energy source, I guess, of life, you would say, yeah, which leads us to a bit of a spiritual aspect of this, but he kind of alluded to that spiritual aspect in leading to the source of the energy, the source of life force, I guess. Would that be, can you talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a spiritual, not a religious, but spiritual, from the sense that the universe is a energy frequency universe. And obviously, when you're in that more reptilian part of your brain, you're in a more animalistic state. You're not in that high vibration. And so the more that you're in that state of being connected, and you literally shift where your focus is in the brain, it goes from brain lateralization and from the rear part of the brain back up into the neocortex. That's the more human connection,
right?
And changes the frequency, and that's the spiritual component. You're now in touch with the source.
Higher vibration.
Higher vibration, yeah.
They're definitely what I have, termed left-brained or masculine-brained, kind of locked in that control, need for force control and filing system instead of being in the moment. So,
yes.
Yeah, I see. So, and when you talk about with the chiropractors, it's segment, I believe you called it. So you're talking about more holistic, dealing with the whole person, really, and not just adjusting the effect. Would that be true?
Yeah. And a lot of people, you think of the word holistic as being like you're using all natural products, all natural approaches, but really holistic is body, mind, and spirit.
Right.
And so that's really where we see that we're working. We're trust me, not everybody gets it at that level, and we don't necessarily sell it at that level because of the religious, sometimes misunderstanding. And but for people that are open to hearing it, we do communicate that to them. And sometimes it's not initially, and sometimes it's something that I get questions later, and they'll say something like, well, ever since I've been doing this, I've been happier, I've been more inner-directed to do some other stuff. It's kind of interesting. So they'll ask me about it, so then it kind of opens the door.
Got it. Yeah. What a great tool for opening people to the energy within them, the source within them, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we've done a lot of little restructuring in the past 2 years. but we're getting ready we've got some things in place. So we're really looking forward to 2020 and keeping our training going. And it takes us about a year to get somebody trained. I've trained people from all walks of life, chiropractors, medical doctors, lay people, all kinds. The process it looks simple, but it's not. And that's why it takes that long to learn it. And but a professional, health professional can come in and you could come in and start the training together, and you'd be starting exactly at square one.
Okay, so you don't have to be a doctor or a chiropractor to get involved with to get trained in Alphabiotics then?
No.
Okay,
no,
and it's the same time frame, about a year, you said, to get trained? And
it takes about a year to train them, and then there's probably a 5-year mastery period where you develop your skill. And
you work with the people in that time too?
With them, yeah, we do. We have a very strict recertification program in which once people are out there, they have to come back and make sure that they're saying and doing everything correctly.
Got it. Okay. And so do you have, somebody who's interested in Alphabiotics, do you have a book, or where would they go to learn more and find out more about it?
Yeah, you can go to alphabioticinfo.com.
So Alphabiotic
info.
Okay. .com.
And it has, you can connect to other people we're doing a little bit of an upgrade on the page right now. Right. So it should be, you can still access it, but it's going to have a lot more bells and whistles here real soon.
Okay. And so what's your vision? What's your goal with Alphabiotics and for yourself? What do you see and what would you like to have happen?
My vision right now is, like I said, we've spent the last 3 years doing some major infrastructure changes. And so we're positioned now to really start helping the people that we have trained out there to be better at what they're doing. And then number 2, we want to grow this. We want to, train more people to go out and do it. Really trying to create a strong network. Yeah. And then we'll be able to grow, and then hopefully we will be a household name. And so, I mean, eventually I don't want to leave my clientele because, they've been very supportive, but I would like I'll be 67 this year. So I want to be able to teach, in the next 5 or 6 years pretty regularly.
Got it.
Yeah.
You look great for 67, I have to say.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, do you get an alignment daily?
At least weekly, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. When my dad was alive, I got him pretty close to daily. Yeah.
So you got him all growing up as a kid. You got him growing up all the time.
Exactly. I had my first one at 6 months. Wow. And my daughter, when she was an hour old, and my grandson when he was an hour old.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. So, and he still comes in and gets his alignment. He's 5.5.
Yeah, I guess, on that note, birth can be very traumatizing for,
Absolutely.
Well, and the mother, huh? So,
yeah. Especially, there's in terms of brain development, we really should stay in there longer, but because our heads get too big to come out, that we come out early.
Well, that's cool. So we would benefit more in staying in the womb longer?
Well, I guess if you could get your nervous system to completely develop, but I don't know. Okay. The universe had another plan.
Very interesting. So this has been a pleasure, and hopefully people get a good understanding of Alphabiotics. It is an alignment that, I still can't even describe it completely. An alignment that.
Think of it as a reboot.
Reboot. There we go. Okay.
It's a sensory. Yeah, it's a sensory input, manually applied, and we're able to create literally a frequency that can literally kind of almost discharge right up through the middle of the brain, and it makes the brain do a systems check. And by the way, when we do it, It's generally not painful, and it is very, very safe. Like I said, I've done it for, over 40 years, no incidents. And then if there is any discomfort with it, it's sort of there and gone. So it's not like some kind of a lingering thing. Anyway, so it's for most people, it's very pleasant, and like I say, you can do a sleeping baby and not wake them up.
And I because of my experience, I say it lowers stress, and we call it declutching the brain in a sense, because it helps you to bring you out of fight or flight and help to process whatever has been held within your nervous system.
Right.
So in that, I guess lowers your blood pressure, allows your body to regulate itself more efficiently, more effectively, and get more access to your brain. Correct?
So the alignment isn't treating any of those symptoms. And as a matter of fact, we're very upfront that we don't heal, treat, or cure anybody.
Yeah.
That we're just helping them get into this non-stress state,
Yeah.
and that we have a way of measuring it. And if you know anything about stress, and you know what the impact of stress is, which we try to educate them on, then you can see what the benefits when you're not there. They actually have a machine down in University of Texas that measures your ability to move in a sympathetic state and then to move in a parasympathetic state.
Very different, I'm sure.
Yes. And so, that's huge when you can see how you function out from under the stress response.
Right. Right. And, I don't know if you know this or not, but it sounds like you probably do, that when we're born whole brain, and around age 6 or 7, a split starts to occur. And between age 9 and 10, an actual separation occurs. We become left and right brain. That may be very simplified for your knowledge. But like you say, the more I'm involved in this, the more I play this game, it seems like the more the whole thing is to get back to being whole brain again.
Yeah, and the little corpus callosum they thought didn't do anything. The little tissue that attaches both.
Yeah.
That in right brain people, it's thicker than in left brain people.
Right. Yeah, I guess Einstein's was very thick, from what I understand. That's kind of funny, yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience? Anything you'd like to any parting words of wisdom, or anything you'd like to leave them with?
Yeah, what I would suggest to them is check out our site, the Alphabiotic Info site, .com. And if there's an alphabioticist in your neck of the woods, or if you want to call my center and get any kind of referral or anything like that, please just go and check it out and see. And
nice. And I saw the one site that has a whole list of trained.
Yes, and the directory is being put up right now. We had a glitch in our webpage, and so she's working on it, and so it should be up here pretty soon.
Okay. And you call them practitioners, or what do you call them?
Developmental alphabioticist.
Alphabioticist. Oh, interesting.
And we use the word developmental too.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. And we don't use the word doctor or anything like that. I have a doctorate, but most of the time it's just our names, and you can use the term DA afterwards. But there's all kinds. You have to watch what you call yourself.
Well, thank you so much for this.
You're so welcome. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate what you do and the great service, and I really hope word gets out too. And good luck with everything.
Okay, and if you ever want to do this again, or you need any more information from us, just let us know.
All right, sounds good. Love to.
All right.
Okay, Michael. Thank you so much. And once again, this is Michael from Alphabiotics, and go and check out the website. And what's the website again?
Alphabioticinfo.com.
Alphabioticinfo.com, and you can find a practitioner near you and learn more about it and check it out. It was amazing and mind-blowing for me, and hopefully you'll have the same experience. So. And
there's a reference to the Academy on there too. You can get to the Academy from that site.
Right, and for anybody who wants to get trained, they can check it out there too. Yes. Yeah. Great. All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
And, this is Dane from An Extraordinary Life TV signing off. Thank you for watching, and look forward to bringing you more extraordinary people again next time. All right. Take care.